The value for this round is going to be morality, and the criterion is net benefits. Contention 1, subpoint A. Juvenile violent crime is a serious problem. Christine Chamberlain writes, on November 17, 1999, a Michigan Circuit Court jury found 13-year-old Nathaniel Abraham guilty of second-degree murder. Abraham was convicted of killing Ronnie Green Jr., a crime he committed when he was only 11 years old. Although tried in an adult court, Abraham was sentenced by Judge Eugene Moore to juvenile detention until the age of 21, at which point he automatically will be released. Abraham's case illustrates the current controversy over the most effective way to deal with juvenile offenders. The arrest rate for violent crimes among juveniles has risen 62% between 1988 and 1994. Although arrests of juveniles fell 9% between 95 and 99, 17% of all arrests in 1999 involved a juvenile. In addition, the recent crimes committed by juveniles are altogether more vicious than those the juvenile court system was originally designed to face. The media's involvement in publicizing many of the violent crimes committed by juveniles has sparked public demand for stricter penalties. In response, some politicians have promoted measures to get tough on juvenile crime. Indeed, U.S. Representative Bill McCollum went so far as to say, on America today, no population poses a greater threat to public safety than juvenile criminals. Many state legislatures have therefore enacted laws making it easier to try juveniles as adults. For example, in Michigan, jurisdiction over Abraham was transferred from a juvenile court to an adult court under a 1997 statute allowing prosecutors to request that a juvenile be tried as adult for certain offenses. Subpoint B. Juveniles are capable of being deterred. Chamberlain continues, although more severe punishments and swifter automatic transfer to adult courts under certain circumstances would seem to provide deterrence, some have argued that juvenile offenders cannot be deterred because they do not conduct a cost-benefit analysis before committing crimes, but rather act based on emotions and or peer pressure. This argument fails, however, because in many cases juveniles know that the crime they have committed is wrongful and are thus presumably capable of being deterred. For example, in 1989, 9-year-old Cameron Kocher used a rifle to shoot and kill 7-year-old Jessica Carr. Even at 9, however, Cameron knew that his actions were wrong because he had tried to hide the spent cartridge. If juveniles who commit murders when they are as young as 9 years old try to conceal their actions, juveniles between the ages of 14 and 17 are likely to be aware of the seriousness of the crimes they commit and are capable of being deterred.
All right, so your criterion is net benefits, right?
Yep.
How does the subpoint B, like talking about how deterrence works, relate to net benefits?
Okay, so what it means is that if juveniles are capable of being deterred, that means that if we're sending these kids into if we're sending them into an adult legal system and having them be incarcerated as adults, this means not only when these kids get out, they know the consequences of their actions and will be less likely to commit commit violent crimes later on in life, but B, also when other kids outside who have not been convicted, who might be considering crime or even under the pressures of their peers, will be more likely to not want to go into crimes.
So subpoint B, the evidence specifically says that juveniles know the difference between right and wrong, right?
Yes.
It doesn't say that they're capable of self-control or that they're capable of predicting what will happen to them later on, right?
Well, I mean, it says that they understand what's bad and what's wrong, and that means what's bad and what's good. So that means that they can, if they want to, resist doing what's bad.
All right. But it doesn't, just to be clear, it doesn't talk about self-control, right?
Not specifically, no.
All right. What's the specific evidence talking about the threat from juvenile crime?
Okay, so subpoint A, the threat from juvenile crime, it just says that in the past, 20 or 30 years, the number of violent crimes committed by juveniles has spiked significantly, and also that the most recent crimes that juveniles have been committing are extremely more violent and vicious than the juvenile court system had originally intended, and therefore the juvenile court system isn't designed to face that sort of violent crime.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start by reading the negative case, and then I'm going to refute Ashley's case. I negate the value is justice defined as giving each their due because administration of what is due is the fundamental purpose of the criminal justice system. You should prefer this to a value of morality because the value of justice is implicit in the resolution since we're talking about the criminal justice system. The criterion should be proportional punishment, defined as punishing based on culpability for one's actions. C.S. Lewis writes, The concept of desert is the only connecting link between punishment and justice. It is only deserved or undeserved that a sentence can be just or unjust. We may properly ask whether it is likely to deter others and to reform the criminal, but neither of these last two questions is a question about justice. There's no sense talking about a just deterrent or a just cure. I contend that juveniles are less culpable for their actions than adults because they have less self-control as a result of a hyperactive socio-emotional system. Lawrence Steinberg writes, adolescent risk-taking is stimulated by a dramatic increase in dopaminergic activity within the socio-emotional system, which leads to increases in reward-seeking. This precedes the structural maturation of the cognitive control system, a maturational process that is gradual and permits advanced self-regulation and impulse control. The temporal gap between the arousal of the socio-emotional system and the full maturation of the cognitive control system, which occurs later, creates a period of heightened vulnerability to risk-taking during middle adolescence. Second, I contend that the adult prison system is equivalent to greater punishment for juveniles since it is uniquely psychologically and physically harmful. Jeffrey Fagan writes, youth in adult prisons reported high rates of physical and sexual assault than did matched samples of youth in juvenile corrections. Using standardized scales, youth in juvenile settings reported that staff was more involved and helpful in social and behavioral services. So what this means is, first of all, juveniles aren't actually as culpable for their actions as adults are because they're not capable of the impulse control. Even if, as her contention 2 says, they're capable of knowing the difference between right and wrong, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be capable of the same amount of impulse control as adults are, which means that they're therefore not as culpable for the crimes that they may end up committing. So that takes out that argument. But also, if you talk about the amount of juvenile crime, I would turn this argument back against her. Putting juveniles in the adult system will just increase the amount of crime they commit because, one, they'll be more psychologically harmed, leading to an increasing antisocial behavior like crime. And second, prisons can serve as a kind of laboratory for crime because it allows juveniles to basically, it exposes juveniles to dangerous adult criminals who they wouldn't be exposed to in a juvenile court setting, which means that they'll be more likely to commit crimes in the future and learn from these experienced criminals. So even under the standard of net benefits, you should still negate, because I'm showing you a clear path where juveniles, by being put in the adult system, will lead to an increase in crime as opposed to a decrease. The only way to decrease crime is to put them in a juvenile setting, which is more accommodating to juveniles and actually takes into account their different cognitive functions. So you should negate.